We're going to have to move on. Professor Pardy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for having me. I urge you not to pass Bill C-16 in its present form because of the threat that it poses to freedom of speech. I would like to make 4 points. Number one, forced speech is the most egregious infringement of freedom of speech, and freedom of speech may be the most important freedom that we have. Compelled speech puts words in the mouths of citizens and threatens to punish them if they do not comply. When speech is merely restricted, you can at least keep your thoughts to yourself. Forced speech makes people say things with which they do not agree. Number two, and I'm speaking here of the first part of Bill C-16, the part that amends the Human Rights Act. That amendment may well require people to use non-gendered speech against their will. That is a form of forced speech. Now, the amendment, as has been pointed out, does not refer to speech specifically. So how do we know that that is in fact the case? Well, as has been mentioned, you must look to what the Human Rights Commissions say about it, because it is those commissions, both the Canadian version and the provincial versions for their provincial codes, that have the primary task of interpreting and applying those provisions. It is not the courts, first and foremost. It is not the government that controls the meaning. Once the statute is passed, its interpretation and application is largely controlled by the Commission and then also by the Tribunal. The courts will provide these bodies with a very high degree of deference, and it will be their call. The statute will mean what the Commission and Tribunal say that it means. So, what do these bodies say that it means? You have heard these words before. I'm going to read them again because the point is important. The Ontario Human Rights Commission believes that the equivalent provisions in the Ontario Code mean, or may very likely mean, that people must use pronouns against their will. Refusing to refer to a trans person by their chosen name and a personal pronoun that matches their gender identity, or purposely misgendering, will likely be discrimination. Number three, if the government does not intend for C-16 to force speech, then it would be a simple matter to say so in the bill. It is not complicated. And that indication would foreclose that interpretation by both the Commission and the Tribunal. Number four, the Honourable Minister of Justice appeared before this committee on May 4. I understood her to state that she did not believe that C-16 would require people to use pronouns against their will, and that it was not the intent of the government to make them do so. My point is this: if that indeed is the case, then putting that intent in the legislation is simple as pie. It has so far declined to do so, and if that in fact is their intent, I cannot understand that reluctance. And I think I'll leave it there, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you.